Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm just working in my watercolor sketchbook. I recently got this so that I could test out new techniques or old ones that I haven't really practiced in a little while. I also got a bunch of new Daniel Smith paints, specifically some granulating ones, and those are ones that I want to test out in this picture today. I did do a little test one earlier, and this is basically what it ended up looking like, but I wanted to give it another shot where I could refine it a little bit more and spend a bit more time on it. I also did a few different tests of how this particular paint granulates, as well as how it mixes with other colors. So the paint specifically that I'm playing with and testing out with is called Violet Shadow from Daniel Smith. Like I said, it's very granulating, so you'll get a lot of separation of the pigments. So there's a lot of teal turquoise pigments and these like blushy ones and purple ones. I know that there's actual technical terms for each pigment, but it's really interesting how it separates and you get these very unique patterns in the way that the color actually settles down. So I am actually really excited about testing that out with this kind of technique and seeing what I can end up with. And I do have a pin drive going on right now for my Patreon. What that means is anyone who signed up for a $10 tier or up over on Patreon by the end of the month, so that's June 30th, will get this free enamel pin shipped out with all the rest of the normal rewards that you get for that tier. I'm really excited to be able to send this out to some of my patrons. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who shows support over there. So yes, if you'd like to get a chance to get this pin, this enamel pin sent to you, then make sure to go check out my Patreon. There's a link down in the description that'll take you over there. But let's go ahead and jump into this little sketch in my watercolor sketchbook. So from all of the tests that I had with this pigment, with painting it on this particular paper, I found that I really like the effects of when I would drop it into basically a wet on wet wash. I've already wetted the paper with just some water, and then I could drop it in and allow it to mingle and then settle and float down to the lower part of the paper. So I have a little bit of a mixture of techniques as I'm working on this. I'll go in and dip into the pure pigment and then drop that into the very top, which is where I want the most concentrated amount of color, and then I'd let that seep into the paint and the water that's around it and dilute itself a little bit. I'd also go in and bring in just some water and drop it into that area as well up at the top to help move some of the pigments around. As I was working on this and adding more darker pigments on top and letting them kind of settle and stream their way down, I realized that it was kind of a very specific shift between where there was pigment on the top and then no pigment on the bottom. And in my test, I really like this like halo that I was able to get where I diluted or created more of a glaze with this actual paint so that it ended up a lot softer, and then it blended into basically clear, just the white of the paper. So I eventually go in with my brush and I create a softer blended layer between where I have more of the raw pigment and then this glazed effect, and then I bring it down into just plain water. This transitions a lot as I'm working on this little piece. I also realize that I want a little bit more darkness around where specifically her hair is, around her neck and her shoulders. I did really want this piece to feel very much like her hair is disappearing with the background. They become one shape. So in this original layer, I did want to make sure that there was some rich pigment where her hair was going to be, specifically where there's going to be shadow. And as I was working on this, I realized that it needed more and more of the darkness confined to around where her hair would be. And then I needed to let it fade out more towards the edges of where I had created this painting. And jumping into the skin painting process, I kind of had a mixture of approaches, and it wasn't really as intentional as I would like, I guess I could say. I've been trying to be much more soft with the blends that I get in the skin so that they're a little bit more luminous and a bit more realistic. But as I was working on this, I let certain areas be a little bit more abstract and focused on the brush strokes so that they would match a little bit with some of the brush strokes that I had in her hair, which I did like. But I think that as I was working on blending out certain areas of her skin and having more of this abstract look, I wasn't focusing enough on each type of technique to make sure that I was doing each one best. So it took a little bit of refocusing myself so that I wasn't just like rushing through the skin and then ending up with areas that were just really blotchy, which is what happened originally. Luckily, the paints that I did use for the skin for this first layer is not staining at all, which again, that's good to really know about your pigments. If I had a really staining pigment, then it means that once I put that first layer down, it's pretty much there and I wouldn't be able to even it out or soften it out. But because this first layer of her skin was pretty uneven, but it wasn't a very staining pigment or mixture of pigments, I was able to go back in with a glaze on top that evened things out and made everything look a lot more smooth and flat in the wash. So I was a lot happy with the progression of working on her skin than I was with the first layer of this. I actually found that this sketch, there was a point where I felt like I just needed to start over and it wasn't really working, but I pushed through it and I kept adding more and more layers on top, and eventually it got to a point where it felt like I was chiseling out something that I was a lot happier with. And that kind of process I talk about all the time, especially for more finished pieces where I feel like I want to finish them out, because oftentimes I'm able to fix something that I thought was unfixable and make it into a piece that I'm happy with. But it's a much more refreshing approach to be able to do that in a sketch, where if I had decided to start over, it really wouldn't have been nearly as much of a commitment. So it wouldn't be as scary to make that decision, but still being able to fix what was not quite working yet and then making it into something that I was happier with. It's still basically just as satisfying. So yes, I'm happy that I stuck with it and kept experimenting with how to make it look the way I wanted to, because I do think that while it doesn't look as great as I necessarily would like, I do think that I learned a lot about my approach with painting skin with this piece. And I did use that same paint from the background on her irises. And I actually decided that I liked the more haunted look when it was just straight white eyes. I felt like that was a lot more impactful and it fit with the emotion that I wanted for this piece. So luckily, since I already knew that this paint lifts very well since I had done tests with it before, I was able to just go in with just pure water on my brush. I let it sit on top of that area of her eyes for a little bit, and then I just dabbed it up a little bit. And I wasn't too aggressive with it. I didn't brush it with the brush, which if I had, I think I would have been able to release basically all of the pigment. But I wanted to leave a little bit there. I wanted her eyes just to look very clouded and very soft. So if you kept looking at it, you would see the irises, but they weren't nearly as obvious as before. So yes, I was much happy with that. I also went into the background and did add these little dots of stars and a moon that I allowed to just seep up that color and then blot it out by lifting it up. And I loved that effect because it wasn't nearly as harsh as if I had masked it out or if I had gone back over with some sort of white medium and put those in there. This just felt really integrated with the texture and with the colors that were already happening. It was just a much lighter version of the background color. And don't forget to check out my Patreon if you're interested in that free enamel pin. Again, I have the link down in the description that will take you over there. I also have a link to my art shop, which is a great way to help support the channel by going over there and checking out my originals or prints or anything else over there. And I also have a list of all the tools that I use to create this sketch in my sketchbook. But that's it. I will be back on Saturday with another art video, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.